The Bible tells us of the Antichrist in John's first letter. Here we read, "You have heard that the Antichrist is coming." Now let's investigate a passage in Daniel chapter 8. A king will arise, insolent and skilled in intrigue. His power will be mighty, but not by his own power. Could this king be the Antichrist? It says that his power does not originate from himself. Compare this to Revelation 13:2. The dragon gave the beast his power. The beast refers to the Antichrist, and the identity of the dragon is found in Revelation 12:9. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan. In other words, the Antichrist derives his power from Satan. The Apostle Paul's testimony concerning the Antichrist is in agreement. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with the work of Satan. This certainly lines up with what Daniel 8:24 says. His power will be mighty, but not by his own power. Continuing in Daniel 8, we read, "He will even oppose the Prince of Princes, but he will be broken without human agency." This seems to be reflected in what Paul wrote about the Antichrist. "Then that lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth, and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming." This ties in with what an angel said to Daniel, "Son of man, understand that the vision pertains to the time of the end." It certainly looks like the king who is described in Daniel 8 is the Antichrist. Let's go to the beginning of Daniel 8 and trace the origin of this man. Here Daniel relates a vision he saw. "Suddenly a goat with a prominent horn between his eyes came from the west, crossing the whole earth, without touching the ground. The goat became very great, but at the height of his power his large horn was broken off, and in its place 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Out of one of them came another horn, which started small, but grew in power to the south and to the east, and toward the beautiful land." Later in the chapter we are given the explanation of the vision. The shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn between his eyes is the first king. The large horn undoubtedly represents Alexander the Great, who founded the Greek Empire in the 4th century BC. Here is the interpretation of the vision Daniel received concerning Alexander's empire. The 4 horns that replaced the one that was broken off represent 4 kingdoms that will emerge from his nation, but will not have the same power. After the death of Alexander the Great, 4 of his generals took over the empire. They divided it between themselves in 4 kingdoms. Daniel 8:9 says, "Out of one of them came another horn." We are told the king whose power is not his own, and who will finally be broken by the Prince of Princes, will arise from one of the 4 parts the ancient Greek Empire was divided into. The rest of verse 9 says, "The horn started small, but grew in power to the south and to the east, and toward the beautiful land," which is Israel. Daniel 11 tells us more precisely from which of the 4 divisions this king comes from. In the beginning of the chapter, we again read about the empire of Alexander the Great, which was broken up into 4 parts. Then a mighty king will appear, who will rule with great power and do as he pleases. After he has appeared, his empire will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 winds of heaven. The rest of the chapter concentrates on 2 of the 4 parts, right up to the time of the end. These 2 kingdoms are called the south and the north. These phrases are used because of the geographical relation of these two kingdoms to the land of Israel. The south corresponds to Egypt, and the north corresponds to Syria with adjacent areas. Toward the end of Daniel 11, we read that the king of the north will set up the abomination that causes desolation, thereby desecrating the sanctuary. Jesus said in Matthew 24, "When you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever shall." In other words, the abomination of desolation will begin the great tribulation just before Christ returns. The king in Daniel 8, who appears to be the Antichrist, is identified in Daniel 11 as the end-time king of the north, who causes the abomination of desolation. This indicates the Antichrist will come from within the area of ancient Syria. Today this area is comprised of modern Syria, Turkey, Lebanon, Iraq, etc. All these countries are predominantly Muslim. Therefore, we have every reason to believe the Antichrist will rise from within a Muslim state in the Middle East. The Bible says the Antichrist is coming. With this in mind, let's take a look at a vision the prophet Daniel had. He saw a horn with eyes and a mouth, uttering great boasts. Daniel is told the horn represents a king who will speak out against the Most High. Could this king be the Antichrist? Revelation 13 says of the end-time beast, "There was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words, and he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God." Let's look at another similarity between the horn and the beast. Daniel saw the horn waging war with the saints and overpowering them. Revelation 13 says of the beast, "It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them." Daniel is told the king will wear down the saints of the Highest One, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Revelation 13 says of the beast, "Authority to act for 42 months was given to him." A time, times, and half a time equals 3.5 years. So does 42 months. Therefore, we can be certain that the horn representing a king in Daniel 7 is the same as the beast representing the Antichrist in Revelation 13. Daniel is shown precisely how this king will arise. In his vision, he saw 10 horns. And then another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled up by the roots before it. Daniel received the interpretation. He was told, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones, and will subdue 3 kings. This is how the Antichrist will arise. He will emerge from among 10 kings or state leaders. He will suppress or defeat 3 of them. The 10 horns are on the head of a dreadful beast. Daniel was told the beast represents a kingdom. He was shown that this beast was a 4th beast to arise. Daniel 7:23 says, "The 4th beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth. In order to see what kingdom this represents, let's first take a look at the third beast. Daniel relates, "It looked like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird, and it had 4 heads." A leopard is known for its sudden attacks, and 4 wings indicate great speed. A large kingdom that was formed very quickly was the Grecian Empire of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC. Nothing in history can compare to his rapid gains. He conquered the majority of the lands of the Persian Empire in the course of just 12 years. The 4 heads on the beast represent the 4 kingdoms that were carved out of the Grecian Empire when Alexander died at a young age, and 4 of his generals divided the empire between themselves. Since the third beast represents the Grecian Empire, the 4th beast is the kingdom that came after the Grecian Empire. That kingdom was the Roman Empire. This means the 10 kings will appear from the area of the ancient Roman Empire. We are told, "Out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise." This map shows the Roman Empire at its largest extent, but can we narrow down the area where the 10 kings rule? Taking a closer look at Revelation 13, we see the Apostle John wrote, "The beast which I saw was like a leopard." This indicates the power base of the Antichrist is associated with the ancient Grecian Empire, represented by the leopard. When we compare this with what we find in Daniel 7 concerning the Roman Empire, it seems to suggest we should be looking at the area the Roman Empire had in common with the Grecian Empire. When we merge the area of the Grecian Empire with that of the Roman Empire, we see that the landmass both controlled covered the eastern part of the Roman Empire and the western part of the Grecian Empire. Therefore, I conclude that we can expect the 10 states or kingdoms to be situated in the general area of the Middle East. Today, this area is made up of predominantly Muslim countries. When the 10 end-time kings are in place, another king will arise among them and subdue 3 of them. This man will be the Antichrist. The angel Gabriel appeared to Daniel in Babylon and told him about the future. In Daniel 9:26 we read that he said, "The Messiah will be cut off and have nothing." The Messiah being cut off was the crucifixion of Christ. Then the angel said, "And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary." The destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the temple of God there happened in 70 AD, about 40 years after the crucifixion of Christ. The angel said those who were going to destroy the city and the sanctuary would be the people of the prince who is to come. So who is this coming prince? To find out, let's continue reading from the same verse. "Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are determined." Gabriel said that after the destruction of the temple, there would be a time until the end that will be characterized by war and desolations. In the next verse, Gabriel said, "And he will make a firm covenant." The pronoun he can only refer back to the prince who is to come in the previous verse. Therefore, the prince who is to come is the one who will make a firm covenant. The verse continues, "with the many for 1 week." This covenant or pact will be made to last for 1 week. The original text says 1/7, indicating a week of years, that is, 7 years. Then the angel Gabriel said, "But in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering." In other words, 3.5 years after the prince makes the pact, he will break it by putting a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. These sacrifices are temple sacrifices. Such sacrifices ceased when the temple was destroyed in the 1st century. So Gabriel is saying these sacrifices will be reintroduced before the end comes. The verse continues, "And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate." This is what Jesus told about in Matthew 24:15, where he speaks of seeing the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place. Jesus then went on to say this act will trigger the start of a time of great tribulation. He said, "For then there will be a great tribulation." This will last the remaining 3.5 years of the prophecy in Daniel before Christ comes. The abomination of desolation in the holy place can be coupled with what the Apostle Paul wrote in 2 Thessalonians 2 about the man of lawlessness who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. This aligns with what the Apostle John saw in his vision of the end time he received 2 decades after the destruction of the temple. He saw a new temple in Jerusalem. John was told, "Get up and measure the temple of God and the altar." The next verse tells us the location will be in the holy city. Piecing all this together, we see that the prince who is to come in Daniel 9, who causes desolation by his abomination in the future temple in Jerusalem, will be the one who the Apostle Paul calls the man of lawlessness. This man is called the Antichrist in 1 John 2. The prince who is to come is therefore the Antichrist. In the last part of Daniel 9:27, the angel Gabriel said, "And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate." The coming prince who causes desolation will be destroyed. Paul says it this way in 2 Thessalonians 2:8. "That lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth, and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming." Now notice what the angel Gabriel had said about the coming prince, the man we have identified as the Antichrist. The people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Gabriel said the people from whom the Antichrist will come would be those who were going to destroy Jerusalem and the temple there. In other words, the Antichrist will descend from the people who destroyed the temple. So who destroyed Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD? 4 Roman legions besieged Jerusalem at that time: the 5th, the 10th, the 12th, and the 15th. They were eastern legions of the Roman Empire. History informs us the Roman legion responsible for the destruction of the temple itself was the 10th. This legion consisted of a mixture of Syrians, Turks, and Arabs. The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, who lived at the time of the fall of Jerusalem, stated in his writing, "The Wars of the Jews, History of the Destruction of Jerusalem," the greatest part of the Roman garrison was raised out of Syria. The area of ancient Syria, as recorded by Josephus, encompassed modern-day Syria, parts of Turkey, and parts of Iraq. So because the angel Gabriel told Daniel the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, we can know that the nationality of the Antichrist is Middle Eastern.